Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our September general meeting of the Fort Worth Astronomical Society. We have a lengthy program today, and we have a special guest speaker, Tyler Bowman. Should be a very interesting evening tonight. We have a really good crowd today. We've got over 30 people in the room, and I think 9 or 10 folks on Zoom so far. So welcome. And it's September. It's cool. In other words, hey, it's not 170 degrees outside. So again, welcome. So our agenda tonight is pretty lengthy. Of course, our usual introduction. Tyler Bowman is going to give a presentation on a beginner's guide to astrophotography. I promise, starting next week or next month, we'll be focused on visual. Okay. Then we'll have outreach report by Patrick McMahon, who's back in the back there. We'll have a Palo Pinto Mountain State Park Partners report. That is a mouthful. Then we'll have the Rising Star Observing report. A lot of stuff going on there. Bill Hall will give his usual what's up in the sky. That's pretty cool. He does an outstanding job there. We'll take a quick break. We'll have a raffle. And then we'll get into the business meeting and general questions and answers. So again, welcome. Thank you. So I want to make a welcome to the new members of the club. And if you're here, just raise your hand. Christine Criggan, Tim Hill and family, Buddy Knight, Bob Black, Christian Pensick and family. Oh, yeah, well, that's what shows it. That's awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. And you're with Robert Cargill. You're going to learn lots of astronomy stuff in spite of them. So, Steve Brewer and family. Okay. Any visitors here tonight? Any potential new members? If you gave John Giarmini money, you're a new member. So, welcome. Okay, and we have, again, tonight giving our presentation is Mr. Tyler Bowman. He's the head customer. He's the head of the customer service and specialty sales for Explore Scientific. It's going to be a very interesting presentation. So Bill Hamill, welcome to the show. Brandon, I'm sorry. It's been a crazy week. So, hey, you come in late, your name's going to get butchered. So, my name is Bob Sirkis. I'm the president of the Fort Worth Astronomical Society. The vice president is Mr. or Ms. Open, and it's not for sale. It's free to anybody that wants it. So, yeah, it's not paid. So, if you even think, and we receive that you're thinking about it, you're it. It's an important job, and if you want to help and help guide how we're going and the direction we're going, we'd love to have you. Treasurer is John Giarmini. He's the cute-looking guy there with the bubble beanie hat on. And our new secretary, Monica Merritt, right here. Big FWAS. That's awesome. We're glad to have her. She's been doing outstanding work. Okay. Director of Raffle and FWAS historian, Phil Stage. And then another director in the back there is Robert Cargill. Bill Hall is a director. He's the guy that gives our monthly What's in the Sky. And Zach Smith, he's our construction engineer. So those are your board members. We are, if you have any questions, you can contact us directly or hit us on the e-groups. Some key contacts. The development committee is led by Michelle Thiessen, who is the president emeritus of the club. Tom Roth. Robin Pond, I don't see her tonight. Zach Smith is on the board, or not on the board, but he is on the board, but he's also on the development committee. Robert Cargill's on the development committee. Shane Griffith, who is studying for finals, is also on the development committee. And it's hard to see, but they do have an email address, rising-star-development@fwas.group.io. And they are doing amazing work, and they're going to give some really interesting information to us tonight. As I mentioned before, our public outreach is Patrick McMahon and John McCrae. Oh, there he is. Hey, John. And I have a question for you. And then Palo Pinto Mountain State Park, that is Mark Smith and Tom Roth. So we have a lot of things going on. And there's actually more that's coming along, and I'll speak about that in a little bit. So about the club, we were formed in 1949, almost 75 years, by Charlie Mary Noble, who the Noble Planetarium is named after. Originally, she had built the club for kids, and like anything else, parents took it over. So we do a lot of interesting things. We currently have about 160 members. And as John will tell you, it starts kind of low where it is. Over the year, it'll peak, and then in the summer, it'll drop. But we are working on things to expand membership. We want your participation. It's your club. So you can participate by going to star parties just to watch or to bring your scope and help out there. If you have questions, ask. The only question that's a bad question is the one that you don't ask. There are a lot of people with lots of differing ways of doing things. Volunteer to do presentations. That's another good way, because everybody has different experiences. And we have everybody here is willing to help. So again, if you have a question, ask, and we'll be glad to help where we can. And of course, the most important thing to the treasurer, at least, is our club is nonprofit. Donations are greatly appreciated, and they are tax deductible. So, next slide, please. Okay, so I've recently, well, for the last year or so, I've been doing astrophotography, and I use ZWO equipment, and there are some folks that are active out there, and Tyler Bowman is one, and so I was chit-chatting with him a little while ago, and he's graciously agreed to give us a presentation. Tyler is going to present again on a beginner's guide to astrophotography. Again, he is the manager of the customer service and specialty sales of Explorer Scientific. He's been a visual astronomer all of his life, and he's been doing astrophotography for the last 2.5 years. So let's give a big welcome to Tyler Bowman, and let's go ahead and get started. That is not Tyler Bowman.
No, that's Wade Prunty.
Hey, Tyler, welcome, buddy. I'm glad you're here.
How you doing, guys? Can you hear me? Am I coming in okay? Bueller. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. I'm not getting
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
I was just curious. I wasn't getting any feedback, so I wanted to make sure everybody could hear me. How is everybody? Welcome. I'm glad to be a part of the Fort Worth Astronomical Society. I was recently in Fort Worth a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, doing a presentation for Fort Worth Camera. It's the same guide that I got some of their DSLR users started on into astrophotography. And that's what this basic setup is, or basic guide can be used for. You can use it for DSLRs, and you can also migrate, and we'll show in the presentation, like smaller tripods like I have behind me, or just using a regular tripod to get going. So I will do a just simple screen share here. Maybe there it goes, here, there. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, it's kind of small.
It's kind of small. Hang on, I'm afraid to zoom in. What I might have to do is, I guarantee you, I'm going to have to adjust my display settings. Hang on. It's 100. Nope. Bear with me. Portrait, landscape. Keep changes. All right, that's what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to do it this way. So go here. Slideshow. Oh, you blasted thing. I love technology. That's not it. That's not what I want. This is what I want. Slideshow. Are you going to start today? Be great. Come on, making me look bad. Making me look real bad here. No, you're not gonna do it. I love stuff. Hey, looky there. Right, so we're gonna go here. We're gonna go back to minimize. We're gonna go. Where's my Zoom link? Here. Okay, back here. Is that any better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, so I had to orientate my screen. So you're gonna have to bear with me because I'm gonna have to turn my head cockeyed because I have it in landscape mode usually. So a beginner's guide to astrophotography. Like I said earlier, this is going to be a main beginner's guide to get you started, either with a DSLR, which I'm currently using just for the webcam, or eventually you'll migrate to a dedicated astronomy camera, a little higher end mount, and so on and so forth. And go. Astronomy. It's impossible to understand, and it's madness to investigate. I am not good with Greek names, so I am not even going to try to pronounce that name, but that is an amazing quote. Astronomy is one of those things that leave people in awe. Every time I look up, and I've been doing this for quite a while now, I am always flabbergasted by just looking up and seeing the stars. Yes, it's all the same, but every time I look up, it's just breathtaking to know that there is a lot of stuff out there, and I'll only be able to capture it with, I use mainly cameras. I'm not much of a visual person, but Kent, another gentleman from Explore Scientific, is trying to get me more into visual. I like taking pictures. I like seeing all the nebulosity. I like having it on the camera. I like all the pretty pictures. So how to get started in DSLR astrophotography? Simply, for astrophotography introduction, what gear do I need? Some people will tell you that you need to just jump straight in to dedicated astronomy cameras, depending on who that individual is. If you call me at Explore Scientific, I will immediately, and you tell me that you're wanting to get into astrophotography, I ask, do you have a DSLR at home or just a simple tripod? I've found that we'll say 90% of the customers that call me have a kit lens or a kit DSLR. that they've had for a while. They've just never really used it. I tell them that's how to get started. It's just, it's cheap, it's effective, and it'll at least get your feet wet instead of just going straight into the deep end like I did and not looking back. I would like for you to spend your money wisely instead of doing what I've done and just spent a lot of money on a hobby. But again, everybody's different. Everybody likes, if you know somebody that's into bass fishing, there you go. Bass fishing is one of the most expensive hobbies out there, because you got boats that are around couple $20,000 or $30,000, depending on if it's new or used, and then you got to have something to pull that boat. That's another $20,000 to $30,000. So it can rack up rather quickly. So I have a less expensive hobby compared to others. So we're gonna, from taking our first shots, finding the right settings to be successful in, either planetary, deep sky, electronic assisted astronomy, which quite frankly is where someone that's able to display the actual live image on a computer screen. A lot of people do it for planetary. There's a couple telescopes out there that are made overseas that do this. One of them, I believe, is a unistellar. Like you can actually use your phone for EAA, and it'll simply stack images one after another, and it makes anybody an astrophotographer. It's great for outreach, in my opinion. It is rather pricey, but it at least gets you started for sure. DSLR-based astrophotography and software into tools to help. And then, of course, there's always in any hobby, further reading and resources 100% of the time. Excuse me. How to get started. Budgets will decide anything. Unfortunately, that's just what it is. A budget, it will make or break. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on the best gear, but if you don't know how to operate that gear, you're not really wasting your money, you're wasting your time. Because you still have to master and read and learn how to actually do this stuff. And that's why I always recommend a DSLR, because it's simple and it's effective, and it's something that everybody can learn and pick up rather well. And if you learn that process, then you can migrate into the dedicated stuff back here behind me. So we're going to start with the basics. You always want to walk before you can run, unless you're me. A little story, and then we'll continue. I started out with a Celestron 70AZ. I originally bought it for my oldest boy, who showed a little bit of interest in space, and I've always had an interest in space. And I was out one night, and I saw on my Facebook feed, because Facebook likes to remind us of our wonderful past things that we've posted, about 4 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, my post came up of when I took my first cell phone picture with that telescope, and it was Orion's Nebula. It was real shaky, but you could definitely make out that it was Orion's Nebula. And that's what hooked me into it. And I have never, ever looked back. So we'll continue now on the PowerPoint. We're going to decide on the area of interest and concentrate on that. Kind of like when you're choosing a telescope, you have planetary, you have solar, you have deep sky, you have wide field, you have Milky Way, you have a lot of stuff that you can shoot. Not all scopes can do the exact same thing that everything else does. I always compare when someone's buying a telescope to different hobbies, like a carpenter. Carpenters have different tools for specific reasons to help them get the job done more effectively and not have to use a wrench as a hammer. There's tools for the job for a reason. Same thing with DSL or telescopes. The little 80 millimeter behind me, in my opinion, is great for deep sky objects. It has a focal length of 480 millimeters. Now, when I throw a reducer on that, which I have on there, that brings it down to around, we'll just round it down to around 300. But I believe it's like 336. So I'm changing the angle by widening the focal length so I can get more objects in there. Now I have a 127 from Explore Scientific that's got a longer focal length, which is great for a little bit smaller. If I want to get real close to some deep sky objects, like Cygnus Wall and NGC. Oh God, I can't remember that one. We'll just call it the Cygnus Wall. It's the North American Nebula. Oh, it's NGC 7000. So there's a lot of different applications, and this is where a lot of reading is going to come into effect to what you're wanting to do. Planetary, you're wanting something long. You want a lot of focal length. Usually SCTs are the main one, or Maksudov Cassegrains are a great choice. Solar, it depends on if you want to go with a dedicated one or if you want to use just a regular scope, which you can. You would want to pick up what is called either a white light filter, which you can throw in front of that lens cell, or you can get what is called a cork chromosphere. It is a Barlow, and it has the ability to bring out the prominences and the chromosphere in the, I call it a roadmap on the sun. I know that's not the correct terminology. Just the prominences and everything it's in the sun, the corona. So there's a lot of interest, and that's what's great about astrophotography. There's different avenues of approach. So you just find one, take it, master it, move on to the next. Because everything's always changing, equipment's changing, telescopes don't really change, but the technology does. Cameras, mounts, all that stuff changes, but it's still the same basic principle. Family DSLR and tripod, and it will give you a sound start, like I mentioned before. I bet everybody that's in that room, at least maybe more than a handful, have a DSLR and a tripod at home. And that's what you can definitely start out with, just sitting in your backyard. Be prepared for plenty of trial and error. AP takes a lot of patience. I'm going to say that word a lot, patience. If anybody has ever fished and they don't get any bites, it is rather annoying, because if you're either up early in the morning to get out there before the sun breaks and you don't get a fish to bite all day, yes, it is rather annoying. That's why I don't fish. I don't fish. I don't have the patience for fishing. I don't. Build on the basics and grow as a budget and skills and time will allow. That's another way to put it, is if you master a certain set of skills within your budget and you have a little extra that you want to learn on, you can grow into something else for sure. Excuse me. Another thing is things to help determine what gear you need. You know, how much time do you have free? When I first started out, I set up every night. I would literally set the tripod down, take the head mount out, get the tripod all nice and level, point it north, put the head mount on, do the same thing, make sure everything's all nice and level. Then I'd go get the counterweights, put it on. Then I'd get the telescope, put it on, make sure everything's all pointing north like it should, and I have the correct latitude set. That took a while. I've worked it down to literally minutes compared to 30 minutes to an hour, hour and a half. Now currently, I wish there was a way that I could remote into my other cameras. Now I have a pier mount set in my backyard. It is just a steel pipe that I purchased from a company, and it's housing a CEM 60, and it's sitting. It literally just gets covered with a Telegizmo 365. My time is very, very valuable, because if I have to test for certain customers that want the testing, I can literally just throw the cover off, mount it, and done. I don't have to mess with it. I don't have to worry about polar alignment because the mount does not move hardly. It's been there for 6 months and I have yet to touch polar alignment at all. And I'm getting under 0.15 arc seconds of seeing for guiding. Now I probably will need to touch it up eventually, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So what is my budget? Well, unfortunately, that depends on you as an individual. And what your wife tells you what you can and cannot spend. That's the other thing. The CFO is a very, very crucial part in astrophotography. But if you're not married, you don't have to worry about it. Always start with the basics. Walk before you can run. What do I have available? Now in Fort Worth, you guys have the Astronomical Society, which is very important. because there's a lot of astrophotographers, I would assume, in your actual club. I know Wade Prunty is one of them. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the other individuals. I just know Wade a lot because he likes to razzle dazzle me every time I get on my show. But that's what I expect from Wade. There's a camera company called Fort Worth Camera in your location, and they sell our telescopes, and they would be more than happy to help you get started in the astrophotography genre. What is my interest from? Again, we're going to talk about the interest portion. Do you want basic, wide field, deep sky, planets, aurora, Milky Way, or lunar? And what is my existing skill level? Everybody's going to start somewhere. Even if you are a DSLR user, you got a little nudge up from everybody else. But when you jump into this side of the realm, you're going to all start at the same ground. Everybody starts from ground one, and you have to slowly work your way up. The answers will help you to form your needs rather than your wants. I jumped into what I wanted, not what I needed. This is what I want. Simple astrophotography is a DSLR and a tripod is a great start. Like I said, I started with a Celestron 70AZ, which is basically a tripod. It's an alt-az mount, up, down, left, right. Use a cell phone, excuse me, to get started. Most DSLRs nowadays do come with kit lenses to start for a wide angle lens, usually from 18 to 55 millimeters, give or take, which is great for deep or wide field. 18 millimeters, you can get some good Milky Way shots for sure. And I mean, it doesn't hurt to just literally point the camera south and just start shooting. I would start around 10 to 15 seconds, see what you get. Now, I do know that Fort Worth has a big Bortle scale. I think you guys are a 7. Are you 7, Wade, or an 8? Can't remember.
Depends on what part you're at, but I was definitely a 9.
Yeah.
And you was.
So it all depends on the Bortle scale. Now, Bortle scale, in case nobody knows, if there's new members that don't know, Bortle scale is basically a way that we measure light pollution. Now, 9 is the high end of the spectrum where it's completely a white zone. You can maybe make out 1 or 2 stars. You can definitely make out planets and the moon. That's it. And the more you can see in the night sky is the less light polluted area that you're in. If you can look up and see the Milky Way or see structure of the Milky Way, you're in about a Bortle 3 to a 4. But when you can completely see a whole bunch of stars and you don't know any constellations because you can't see them, that's a Bortle 1. I was in a Bortle 2 and I did not know where anything was. That's how much of a visual guy that I am. I just looked up and was like, oh, there's a lot of stars. There's a ton. And that's what's exciting is there's so much to see. When you get a chance to go to a Bortle 1 zone, do it. I would highly recommend it because you will literally you will get a crick in your neck from looking up so much. So take a lawn chair, relax, and just look up and enjoy. Long exposures. We want 30 seconds timed intervals on most DSLRs. Now, if you're using a regular tripod, you're going to get what's called star trailing. Don't worry about it at this current point in time. When you progress and you get better at it and you get like a little star tracker, then those will go away and you can do even longer exposures than 30 seconds. You want to always do manual mode or bulb mode, and you always want to manually focus. You always want to go into infinity because that's where you're focusing is to infinity. When you capture images of stars, moon, and the aurora. So when I try to focus on a star, I usually on my cameras, I have the ability to zoom on the back of the screen. Excuse me. And I try to find one bright-ish star, and then I just focus on that. And I'll rack it in just right outside of focus to where it blows back out. And then I bring it right back into its tightest point. And without a batten off mask, I can't really determine if it's in focus, but I'm going to assume that once it's at its tightest spot, it's good enough for me. I'm not picky about it. If I'm doing DSLR work, I'm not worried about the stars. I know I'm probably going to get trailing. It's the experience, and that's what I'm after. A good place to start is the sky around the northern celestial pole. There's a lot of stuff around the NCP, the North Celestial Pole. If you're not familiar where the North Celestial Pole is it's north, believe it or not. Some people notify it as the North Star. That's our axis point, or I think of it as a kebab. You have one in the north, you got one in the south, and we're just spinning on it. We're just roasting on a barbecue. So that's our kebab. That's that's the axis that we spin on. That star never moves. It moves slightly, but we never see it. But that's why if you see time lapses of the North Star and you see one star directly in the center and it's not moving while the rest of them are just circling around it, that's the North Star. So we want to stack and process images, and a PC is required. But some people that are DSLR users, they may have certain programs like Photoshop. Some of the guys that are more dedicated astronomy users use PixInsight, Deep Sky Stacker, but we'll go over those a little later here in a minute. A beginner astrophotography headlamp. So I know this picture is kind of counterintuitive because a white light lamp is frowned upon in astrophotography, unless you're by yourself. The reason being is you want to preserve your night vision as best as you can, but you also don't want to fumble around in the dark and not see anything, because it can be rather scary depending on if you are in a dark site. If you can't see 2 feet in front of you, you're in a dark site. Always try to use a red headlamp. So the white, it's okay for this particular instance, but always try to go with a red headlamp. That way you're preserving your night vision. You can still see it in the dark. You can actually still fumble around and look at the camera settings, and you're not ruining anybody else's night vision as well. A digital SLR or a DSLR, wide angle lens, which most come with kit lenses, and a tripod. So you notice in the picture with the tripod is a little tracker. Well, how that works is you got a ball head sitting on top of it, so you can angle. We'll call that the deck. You can angle wherever you want to shoot in the night sky, and then you'll turn on that it's a little clock drive, and it literally just turns with the rotation of the Earth. And you have a little scope that's sitting out to the side of it. That's for polar aligning right there. So once you get it polar aligned, you hit a switch, and this little drive right here slowly turns throughout the night, and you have tracking mobility. So it gives you the more pinpoint stars instead of all the star trails that you see in the picture behind this wonderful woman that you see in the corners, all the star trailing. So we're going to move on real quick. Setting up your DSLR. You want to choose a full manual mode, sets both aperture and shutter speeds. That is very important with astrophotography. It's completely different from normal photography, like landscape and all that other stuff. With landscape photography, normal use of photography lenses, you want to bring the f-stop all the way down. You want to choke as much light as you can so you can have a nice, sharp image. But with DSLRs, you want to open that f-stop all the way up. Within reason, if you have a 1.8 lens, you want to at least bring it down to about a 2 to a 3. You don't want to go too crazy and open it all the way up, because then you're going to introduce artifacts and anything else. You want to find an interval timer setting. You want to select long exposures normally. 30 seconds is a good starting point. You may have to progress. We'll go over it's called the 50 rule or the 500 rule. You'll take 500, divide it by whatever camera lens in millimeters that you're using, and when that number it spits out, you will use that number for tracking or exposure time. So we want to set focusing to manual focus. Lens sometimes have a slide switch for manual focus. Some Nikon cameras need a menu setting disabled for the focus lock. So you got to make sure you check your settings. Just because you put it in manual on the top doesn't mean that there's an internal setting that's keeping it from you having the ability for manual focus. And there's also manual focus on lenses as well. There's a little switch that's on the sides of them. You need to make sure that that's also in manual. An ISO setting, most modern DSLRs need to be around 400 to 800. Again, that depends on your light pollution that you're currently in. This ensures that they're fast enough to minimizing the noise and the image experiment. And the image experiment is to find the desired ISO, excuse me. With astrophotography, it's nothing but a big giant experiment until you find the correct settings that you need to get the actual picture that you want. When I did this presentation at Fort Worth Camera, the next day we actually went to a site and did a bunch of Milky Way shots. I have a dedicated DSLR that's been modified where they take out the IR filter, and I was doing literally 1.5 minute exposures. I had a little tracker so I could push it a little more to get the nice cloud in the Milky Way. Everybody else in the group was doing 15 to 30 second exposures. Now, the thing was, they were very frustrated because they couldn't see anything compared to my camera, because mine lights up like a tree. Because with my camera, since I removed a certain filter, I can detect the hydrogen alpha a lot better, and it literally brightens up or just captures all that HA. There's a lot of HA data out in space, at least in the Milky Way. So ISO setting, we want to go in the raw format size. For this image settings, this will ensure that all the noise reduction is off and that you have shooting at the highest bit value that you can usually get, which is usually around 14 bits. Until you get into dedicated astronomy cameras, you can push that to 16 depending on what you're doing. So during the daylight, when we're setting up our DSLR, we want to focus the camera on something that is at a distance. So where I'm located, if I point to the south, there is a giant cell phone tower. It's about 5 miles out, and I can just barely see it just right at the top. And that's what I try to focus on. It's overkill for what I'm wanting to do. You don't have to go that far. You can literally go a couple houses down and do a heat stack that's on top of a roof line, a tree that's at least a half a block away. You don't have to go 5 miles out. It's just what I do because I have a clear line of sight of it and I can see it. And it's just pretty, 5 miles is 5 miles. It's far. So we want to find the focus point, make a note where it lies on the focus ring. So when you find focus on infinity, sometimes people bump things. I've done it. My kids have come out and they've bumped things. I usually use some gaffer's tape and just tape the focus ring so it doesn't move. That's what I usually do. So we want to select the widest and fastest aperture you can set. Some kit lenses are as fast as 1.8, but depending on the lens, you may need to shoot around f4 for best results. So just because you have a fast lens doesn't mean you need to use the fast lens. I've never used 1.8. I have 1.8 lenses. I usually just stick around the 2 to 4 area because that's where I find the best results for what I'm shooting. Before your first night out, make sure that your memory cards in the camera and the batteries are completely charged. Memory cards, you don't have to worry about them being charged, but at least blank. I'd hate for you guys to get out there and then you turn the camera on after like 4 or 5 shots, memory card's full. It's frustrating, especially if you got family photos on it. You're like, well, do I want to format it or do I just want to go back home? It depends on what you guys want to do. Take extra batteries because low temperatures can reduce the capacity of the battery. I have been susceptible to that, and it literally ruins your whole night of imaging because of that issue. If you take a PC or a power supply with you, they do have power supplies that you can just plug into the battery and just run off like a Jackery, EcoFlow, or any other kind of deep marine cycle battery. Keep batteries in your pocket. Keep them a little warm. It's starting to get a little cooler here, and I know it is for you guys as well because we're kind of in the same neighborhood. Doesn't hurt to carry hot hands with you, at least in the car when you're doing astrophotography, because it does get colder at night. And then you can use those to kind of keep the batteries warm in your pocket. During the first time of getting set up, do not do the setup in the dark. Don't do it. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to get mad. You're going to want to throw things. Please don't throw things because things cost money. And I don't want you to have to spend more money. Darn flies. On the first side of the hill in the cold, surrounded by other photographers while waving your white light around. Frustration. Like I said, white lights aren't the best to use around other astrophotographers. But again, if you are by yourself, it's okay. Night vision does adapt, but please try to preserve other individuals' night vision that want to keep it, that are doing visual, because visual is a whole nother ball game, and those guys take it seriously. They really do. Always test things at home before you're out in the field. Like with this one back here, I haven't ran this ZWO AM5 yet. I just got the telescope hooked up. I just got everything all on it. Haven't ran it. Tonight's going to be the first night. I'm expecting hiccups. I'm hoping for no hiccups, but I'm expecting them. And then I just got to correct it and just move on to the next night. Set up your tripod in a sheltered spot and mount the camera. Check that the lens is set to an infinity focus point, and that's, again, if you want to use the gaffer's tape to kind of lock it in, so to speak, that you set earlier. For your first shot, point towards Antares. Now, when you go out, I'll show you where it is. I physically can't show you where it is where I'm currently at. Right now, it should be towards the southwest of the area because the Milky Way is slowly descending back over. So what you would kind of want to look for if you go outside is you want to look towards the southwest, about 30 to 40 degrees up, depending where you are. If you have a mobile phone, there's a lot of astronomy apps that you can look up, and it will help you identify Antares. But what you want to look for is a bright orange star. It's funny because I believe it was the Greeks, that named it Antares, aka not Mars. Because if you look, if you do astronomy long enough, you'll notice that Mars follows the same ecliptic path ish as Antares, and sometimes they get really close to each other. And then after a couple of years, or at least a couple of days, they noticed that Mars goes past it. So they deemed it Antares, or AKA it's not Mars. They were funny back then. So we want to check and we want to point towards Antares. So Antares kind of looks like a bow in the south. To me, it looks like a bow. Antares is the arrow, and then you have the arc of the bow that's in the back. Turn the phone off. So that's Antares, and it's always pointing in the opposite. So the bow, or Antares, is pointing towards the Milky Way. Think of it that way. You want to use an interval timer. You want to take a 30-second shot. Again, that's going to depend on if you have a tracker, if what you're using. Always try to remember the 500 rule. You want to take 500, divide it by the size or the millimeter of lens that you're currently using. Even if it's a kit lens, you either do 18, 55, or in between, and that will give you your exposure number. You want to keep all the lights turned off. You want to use a red head torch or a headlamp. Then you want to check the image on the back of the LCD screen using the plus or minus on the magnification buttons to see how the stars are looking. But if you focused it before, you should be okay. You want to adjust focus if needed, and then rinse and repeat. You just retake. Some focal lengths may cause star trailings, but that's okay. We're worried about just the experience at this current point in time. If you do get some star trails, just reduce the exposure, and then that should minimize some of that trailing. Patience is the wonderful key. Again, patience, patience, patience. Rome wasn't built in a day. Astrophotography wasn't mastered overnight. I can promise you. Adjust settings that suit to your setup, and take your time. Be prepared to spend time finding the best settings for you. There's a lot of stuff that I still have to tinker with, and I've been doing this for 2.5 years. Be creative. Try to find the Milky Way and see what you can find. You know, there's a lot in the Milky Way core, and it is a long, long part of the galaxy of ours. There's a lot there. If you ever get a chance to use one of those apps, just look into and just zoom in. I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of stuff there. Excuse me. Helpful tips or tools is a mobile phone, compass. Star charts are always great. But again, with modern technology nowadays, I don't know if star charts are slowly going towards mobile devices, but that's what I use mainly to find out what I'm looking at. If I want to know the star, I look at that. I mean, I hate to say it, star charts, in my opinion, they're slowly going away with the older generation. I'm having Kent, like I've said before, another rep at Explore Scientific, show me or use star charts with me. That way I can get familiar with it. That way I can kind of keep that tradition alive of using star charts. And that way I can show my kids how to use it and pass it on farther down the road. We want to use night mode to avoid reducing night vision. Night vision is very imperative. It takes at least, if you ruin your night vision within a 1/10 of a second, it'll take 30 to 45 minutes to gain it fully back. Dress for the occasion. It does get cold depending on if you do winter astrophotography. It gets real cold. Sometimes here it gets -10, and I don't want to come outside if I don't have to, but I will. I've done it with no shoes, with snow on the ground. It does not bother me because I'm not going to be out there very long. Read. Test and read. Again, astrophotography is nothing but a big giant experiment that you get to have fun with over and over and over. Some things may work well and perfect one night, and then the next night it just goes foobar. It happens. It really happens. Join a local astronomical league. Well, for you guys, that you did. So you've already made the step in the right direction by joining an astronomical league for sure. There's a lot of knowledge, especially in your guys' astronomical league, that all you got to do is ask questions. That's where you're going to get the best answer. No known ask question, you're never going to get an answer. Never. Don't be that person. If you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. I know every astronomical league, there is a lot of people with a lot of knowledge, and they're wanting to pass it down. They're wanting you to learn. That way they can pass that along to keep the Astronomical Society moving. Now we're going to talk about the little simple AP and the next steps, like trackers, more mount driven type-ish stuff. We want to use a specialized wide angle lens to capture big wide images. I have a 24 millimeter lens, an 85 millimeter lens, 24 to 70. So it just depends on what you're wanting to do. That's 480. The other scope that I have on the mounts, 530. So it just depends on what you're wanting to do. You want to build a basic system. Intervalometer gives you longer exposures. Dew control. Dew is a terrible, terrible thing to waste or to negate or not deal with because it will ruin equipment, especially lenses. After time, if there's enough dew entered or can get into the system or a lens cell, and it will, once it mildews, you're toast. I don't like mildew or fungus. People say you can clean it. To me, once that etching has already started into the optics, you cannot get rid of it. It's terrible. You have to regrind the whole surface of the optics on these things and recoat it, and that just costs a lot of money. So if you have the ability to use a dew heater and a dew controller, please do. That way you're saving your equipment, and you also don't get dew on the actual lens, because that you could be working on a giant project like the Milky Way shot, and then all of a sudden when you start scrolling through your pictures and you see a fuzzy in the middle, and it's just slowly spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading until it covers the whole image, and then you're wasting time at that point. Power supplies for the camera. Longer exposures, longer runs cause the need for extra batteries. Add a star tracker. Star trackers they can be inexpensive. They range from a couple hundred to, well, just a couple hundred. From I think anywhere from 600 to 200 to 600 bucks, depending on what you're wanting to do. Extra clothing, as I would say, just more socks. because I can't stand having cold feet, especially in the winter. If my feet get wet, I'm done. I'm not the happiest person to deal with. So I always try to dress with more socks, and being prior service, that's the only thing that I packed more of was more socks. So planetary imaging. Planetary requires a lot of trial and error, and patience again is the key. Cameras are usually around $200 to $300 for the cheaper end. Software is free. We'll go over the software portion here in a minute. It's a different approach. Planets are bright and easy to overexpose. They extremely are. 1 second exposure will completely blow out the whole thing. And you're using milliseconds when it comes to planets because they're so bright. Take short burst videos, and we'll talk about the stacking softwares and stacked video frames. Lucky imaging. It's basically luck. If you have a good polar alignment and you have a good tracking and good seeing, and you slew your mount to the object and it's right in center, you shouldn't have any problems. Just start taking as many images as you can. Buy a small webcam style camera. They're very inexpensive, like a Logitech type camera. Specialized mounts not required, but can be hand tracked in azimuth or elevation. You just have to sit there and watch your computer and just turn the dials left, right, up, and down, and just keep it in the frame. You need a PC, unfortunately. Telescopes to get good images does not have to be huge or complex. You don't have to get an 11-inch Edge HD, which is, I think, now around $4,500. You can use a refractor. You can use anything, really. You can use a telephoto lens on a DSLR. We've had a guy do it when I was doing the Fort Worth camera thing. He had a 600 millimeter lens with a 2x converter. He saw Saturn just fine. So, I mean, you can literally do it with anything. With deep sky imaging, entry to deep sky astrophotography is popular, and it's very addictive. Wade can attest to this, and if there are other astrophotographers out there, deep sky is very, very addictive. There's a lot of stuff out there, and we always try to push the boundaries to seeing what we can get more out of it. If anybody's familiar with Dustin Gibson over at OPT, he likes to crank the saturation up all the way to an 11, and his images look amazing because it's just what he does. Requires a larger budget, a couple of thousands, to get started, to get a decent mount and a decent telescope, a couple thousand. To like the AM5 back here, we'll call it an even 2,000. The Explorer Scientific 80 millimeter is under 1,000. So you're already in the $3,000 range. Imaging setups can be basic and can actually progress into complex, which I've done it. The mount outside, it's gotten complex, but it's simple for me to use, but for a beginner, they'd look at it and they'd be completely lost, but it's okay. You can start simple with the DSLR into a cast telescope. I'm drawing a blank. Cast, just any kind of telescope will work. Excuse me. Ask your astronomical society if they have loaner programs into different telescopes. You guys may have some. It doesn't hurt to ask. It really doesn't. Full basic rig, equatorial mount. You have small wide field refractors, which is that right there behind me. DSLRs, guide scopes, cameras, guiding software, power supplies, intervalometers. Starts getting a little bit more complex. On that particular setup, I have the ASI Air, which is great for beginners. I always recommend it. A ZWO 294 with a filter wheel, a little guide camera right there with a little guide scope. And that's what I use for my simple basic setup. It's can get expensive and complex, but with that setup, it makes it simple. All you really need is a cell phone or a tablet, iPad, and you could run that setup from there. Deep sky imaging, there's two main types. You have deep sky AP long exposure or an electronic assisted astronomy. So with electronic assisted astronomy, like I said before, It's with a computer screen and it's live viewing, basically. It's great for outreach. One of our astronomy members or astronomical members here in Springdale does only EAA. He has a little melon cam with a 9 1/4 SCT, and he literally throws it on planets and he just leaves it on his screen, and he talks about what you're seeing in the actual image. Some people say slew to something different, which he wants to make sure that everybody gets to see Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, because there are kids out there that haven't got to see these planets yet, and adults, and they're mesmerized about they can actually see these things just by looking at a computer screen. And then he'll slew to other M objects, Messier objects, to show what you can actually see. Some planetary cameras can be used for EAA by stacking short exposures to form an image. That's what it is. Long exposures equal anything greater than 1 minute. So planetary, anything greater than 1 minute, you're blowing it out. It's just going to be overexposed. You're not going to see much detail. That's why you wanted, for planetary, I always recommend shorter, quicker exposures. That way you're not blowing out everything, because everybody wants to see the Cassini split in the rings of Saturn. It's honestly amazing. Pros and cons to each image quality is the skill level and equipment required. Like I said before, you can buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. If you don't know how to use it, it's just going to sit there and collect dust, unfortunately. You've wasted tens of thousands of dollars. There's electronic assisted astronomy, just some of the images that have been gathered. These are unfortunately not mine. Some of these objects aren't quite up yet. Orion doesn't show up till around 2-ish or 3 in the morning. Rosette's around the same. So yeah, I'm eventually going to get to them. And here's longer exposures. One of these is the Spaghetti Nebula in the southern hemisphere. I wish we could see it because I'd like to see what Wade could do with this thing. I think he would do very well with the Spaghetti Nebula. And then, of course, you got the Rosette in a monochrome SHO palette and the Andromeda's Galaxy, which everybody is familiar with. Software and tools for planetary imaging. You have SharpCap, which is free. Registack, SharpCap and FireCapture are both 100% free. So if you want to do planetary imaging with a DSLR, this is the way to go. Registacks and AutoStacker are stacking software tools. They help bring out the detail of the actual images that you do. And they will compress the AutoStacker over here. Oh, mouse. AutoStacker here will take your video that you shot and put it into one single image. And then you would go over to Registacks, and then you would bring out all the wonderful detail of those images. For software tools for deep sky imaging, Backyard Nikon and camera. Unfortunately, those are not free. I think those are $35, $50, I believe. AstroPixel Processor is a stacking software. That's unfortunately not free. Deep Sky Stacker is free. You can use that to your heart's content. I used that for the longest of time until I migrated to PixInsight. PixInsight is a real in-depth thing, and it still boggles my mind. If you need any help with PixInsight, Wade will be able to assist a heck of a lot better than I can. He's really good. He's a wizard with PixInsight. There's a lot of individuals out there that have programs or one-on-one tutoring to master PixInsight, because it is a real in-depth tool. But if you're a DSLR user and you've done DSLRs for quite a while, you already know that you have Photoshop, and you can do the same thing in Photoshop. You can merge all those images together and create a beautiful image, as you see here, which is the California Nebula. Further reading and resources. astrobackyard.com is one of them, or Trevor Jones. He's got a lot of YouTube videos as well. And that's great for beginners. It's a great beginner's tool to use. YouTube. YouTube is amazing. It's got everybody that's doing reviews. some equipment discussions, but mainly I find that it's reviews. Sometimes it can be one-on-one stuff, or just processing, how to process certain things like galaxies, nebulas, and all that stuff with PixInsight, Photoshop, how to use Deep Sky Stacker. So the whole main tools that you could, if you need or want, is YouTube. All the information you need or want is on YouTube. Then you have Cloudy Nights, which is a humongous forum. And same with AstroWire. If you have a question, ask it there. Again, I would always recommend going to your fellow astronomical league or society, because they have the answers too. And that way you don't have to wait on somebody to give you the answer. Some people come off as snarky sometimes on Cloudy Nights that I find. It's just, there's always somebody out there that's better than others. It's just the way people are sometimes. Astrophotography Manual and a Practical and Scientific Approach to Deep Sky Imaging by Chris Woodhouse. Getting Started on Budget Astrophotography of Mr. Alan Hall. That's a very good book. I have that book, and I would highly recommend that book. You can get it on Amazon. Budget Astrophotography Imaging with Your DSLR or Webcam by Timothy Jensen. That's another great book. And that's it, folks. That is the whole thing. So I hope you at least got something out of this. I hope it wasn't too quick. I know you guys got a long meeting, so I try to be less than an hour. I tried. But I hope that you're able to take some of that information that I gave you and use it. If you need any further help, you can ask your president of the Astronomical Society, and he can get in touch with me, or you can call Explore Scientific and just ask for me, and I'll help you out in any way, shape, or form that I can. That's what I'm here for, is to get you started, no matter what it takes. That's it.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Are there any questions? Or I do want to make one comment. We did record. We are recording the meeting as we always do, so you'll be able to refer to this. Me and some of the board members were just really excited to see people taking pictures of Tyler's presentation. That just shows that there's quite a bit of interest. So, Tyler, we really appreciate your time.
No, you guys are welcome. 100% welcome.
Any questions? Any questions on Zoom? The question was, could you touch on back focus for a little bit?
So, back to the lights on. So with my telescope that I have back here, I have a reducer. Manufacturing specs is 55 millimeters. That's from the front of the glass of the sensor, or from the front end of the glass to the camera sensor. It's 55 millimeters. Now that is a general rule. It's sometimes not always 55 millimeters. It's plus or minus 5 to 10, usually sometimes. With that reducer, depending on what scope I use, if I use it on my 127, I have to go back to 72 millimeters. So you have to experiment, unfortunately. There are individuals that have used certain setups like this one back here or anything else and then give you more accurate number. But 55 millimeters is always a good reference point to start. And with most ZWO cameras, actually all ZWO cameras, they come with the necessary adapters or extension tubes to get you to 55 millimeters from either using a flattener or a reducer. So that's always a great starting point, is 55. And most DSLRs on their camera, if you look on the side of the DSLR, you'll see a weird little symbol. usually on top of the body of the camera. That's where the sensor sits. And that's where you measure from that point to the front of the other, or the flattener or wherever, and that's 55 millimeters as well. I hope that helped or answered any questions. I'm not the best at explaining things.
Any questions on Zoom, Chris? Okay. Tyler, you're more than welcome to stay as we get into the business part of the meeting, but again, I want to extend my heartfelt appreciation for you spending your time giving us this wonderful presentation.
I do have one question for the president, is if he could send me, or where do I need to go to become a member of Fort Worth Astronomical Society?
I will put you in contact with John Giarmini. He's our treasurer, and he will make that happen. And something you may not know is we recently acquired a 4.5-acre Bortle 2 site about 2 hours from here. So the next time you're in town.
Yes. Yes. I'd love it.
And that's going to be a topic of discussion here in a little bit. But the next time you're in town, give us a holler. And actually, we're going to hopefully settle on a grand opening event. So
excellent. Congratulations, guys.
Thanks.
And I appreciate you having me on here. Y'all take it easy.
All right. Thanks very much. Okay, that was awesome. So, yes. All right. Okay, so this is just a real quick thing here. We had the grand opening event scheduled for this coming Saturday and a work event scheduled for last Saturday. And we had to cancel it, and we sent emails out via Night Sky Network, and there were some folks that unfortunately didn't get the email and made the trek on Saturday. So, John, you want to speak to this real quick, or?
Okay, can you hear me now? What I'd like to, I've had several people tell me they did not receive an email. The way we normally handle group emails is through Night Sky Network, and that's what we did with this one. It went out on September 14th. So I would, if you did, by show of hands here in the room, how many did not receive an email about not having the open house? 2, 3, 4, okay, 5. Okay, if you could just stop by, Danny, I can get your name, and Mike, I can get your name, but the rest, may not know your names enough. I'm going to send this to Night Sky Network and ask them why we have this problem, because we have not experienced this problem in the past.
I do get emails from the club on Grooves.io, so if a message does get sent out to us through Night Sky Network, does it show up there?
No.
No. And the reason why
it's two different pieces of software. They're not owned by the same people or anything. It's two complete, it's like Microsoft Express and LibreOffice. It's not the same stuff. So the Night Sky Network software is what we use for membership maintenance. And that's where we do our mass mailings. The e-group, not everybody joins the e-group. So we can't use that as a basis on trying to get to everybody. This is the first time that I've seen a situation like this where we've had multiple people not have email messages sent by Night Sky Network. So.
Thanks, John. And again, we're working on trying to get that sorted out. Okay, so now we're going to drop into our what I call the special interest group reports, and as we get more and more, hopefully we'll have a young persons group eventually, started by these two young people back here. So we have Palo Pinto State Park Partners report, followed by outreach report. John McCray will let us know what happened at Tandy Hills recently and what's coming up, and Patrick will talk about the other star parties that are on schedule. So, Tom. Mark's giving the report. Oh, Mark.
Tom, do you want to discuss
The reason why we joined the board is that next year is the 100th anniversary of the State Parks of Texas. They're going to have this park open by the end of 2023. Astronomy is going to be one of their features of the park, along with other things. So we've gotten involved with the board because they're very receptive to the astronomy program. It's going to be certified dark site. Their primary demographic is Fort Worth. They're looking at tens of thousands of people coming to that park to enjoy the dark side, the dark nights, and also many activities. So I think this is a long-term investment in the health of our club and the membership, that we can grow the club through outreach with the Palo Pinto State Park. The city of Strawn next to the park has shrouded all their street lights. The ranger out there grew up there. He's going to be there forever, and he's very receptive to us working with the park to have as many people participate in outreach of the park. So I look at it as a long-term investment of keeping or growing our membership. It's like a feeder system. And again, the primary demographic is going to be the Fort Worth area for people to come out there, and that's why I got involved with the board. So.
Looks like a feather duster. Okay, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Palo Pinto Mountain State Park, it is the first state park that the state park system has added in the last 25 years. It is about 80 miles due west of Fort Worth, just off Interstate 30.
20. 30 turns into 20.
Okay, 20, 30. Interstate 20. So those of you who are familiar with Star Ranch, not Rising Star, but Star Ranch, is just, it's a little bit closer than the location of Star Ranch. And Tom Roth is on the board of the Palo Pinto Mountain State Park Partners. That's a mouthful. That is a group of pretty much volunteers that work raising funds or allocating funds and directing how the park gets developed. So we're very fortunate to have Tom on that committee. Michelle, Tom, and I attended the Palo Pinto Mountain State Park Partners board meeting on the 17th of August. It's held in City Hall in Strawn. The board meetings are fairly small, but they do have an annual meeting that is open to anybody that would like to attend. The program at this past meeting was pretty much the superintendent, James Adams, telling us the status of construction of the park. Main thing is they're redoing all the roads within the park. Because of that, there is no access to groups within the park to use the park at this time, even though in the past there was an astronomy meeting or two out there, or star party. They've had trail rides and stuff like that. All that has stopped because you really cannot get into the park right now. To give you an example of how much work is going on, one of the discussions is they were calling in concrete trucks. The first one they could schedule was on the 6th of September. And then they said, when do you want the next one? And they said, give us one every day for the next 30 days, at least. So they're really getting moving. They're expecting to start building construction in the next couple of months. It'll be done in 12 to 13 months. And as Tom said, the park will open in 2023. There's no doubt about that. The reason being, 2023 is the 100th anniversary of the state park system in Texas. They're bringing on 2 or 3 new state parks. This is one of them, but this is the only one that will be close enough to completion to open next year. So there's going to be a lot of political pressure. There's going to be a media event. This is probably going to be late 2023, but it's all about the Texas State Park system. They're staffing up. They now have an assistant superintendent, an office manager. They'll eventually get to about 14 people. Then they'll also have about half a dozen volunteers. So the annual meeting of the partners is scheduled for Saturday, January 21st next year. The one we had this year was in the July time frame. It was pretty much delayed due to COVID reasons. So in January, we'll get an update from the superintendent and the organization. There is a location that has been identified for astronomy. It'll be beside a pavilion. We don't know the specifics about it, but it is the location where star parties were held in the past. It is not intended to be the final location. When they had to cut back on monies, they had $4 million worth of roads they had to drop out. One of those went up to a campsite, which also passed the final location for astronomical location. But we will have access to an area around the pavilions. There'll be some facilities there. You'll be able to drive into the area. Don't know what it'll look like after they get through with the construction, but there's already a designated area planned.
Turned off for the astronomy events.
But like if we want to go out on a weekend on our own, can we get the lights turned off, or do we have to make?
For us, because we've got a presence on the board, I don't think it'll be a problem.
But you have to make arrangements ahead of time to get the lights turned off. I'm getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I'm just wondering what this means.
Can you take the mic, because folks out in the electronic world can't.
The astronomy side is next to pavilion, but the lights can be turned off, and I think my interpretation is that we have access to turn those off when we take our scopes out at any time.
Those are the kind of rules that will have to be developed over the next year.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Tom. Mr. Patrick, I'm sorry, no, John McCrae, the elder statesman for Tandy Park.
Okay, for the Tandy Hills Star Parties, I want to thank everybody for coming out for the September Star Party. We had more people out there than we did customers. It was cloudy the whole night. We got about 5-minute viewing of Saturn, 5-minute viewing of Jupiter. hardly got to see the moon at all. Most of us left about 10:30. At that time, a large group came in and went straight to Patrick, who had his telescope still set up. As we were leaving, it cleared off, Patrick said, and they had Saturn and Jupiter and the moon. So it's timing. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Our next star party is on October the 1st. The sun sets at 7:13, so for solar viewing, you have to get out there a little earlier. We have we have Saturn and Jupiter up, and Neptune if you have a go-to scope and can find it. So we hope, or I'm hoping, that the weather will be a little cooler than it has been in the past. I'm not going to guarantee it, though. So hope to see you out there. Oh, one other thing. Don't forget to log your time in. When you go to the star parties, go to the Night Sky Network and log the time and miles in.
Thank you, John. Patrick.
Okay, first, can you hear me? Yeah. All right, so first of all, thanks for everybody who came out to Dino Valley Saturday. We had about 13 scopes, and I think about 200 guests came through, so it was a good, nice, clear night. Showed them quite a few objects, the planets, Milky Way objects, so it was fun. And our next one down there will be October 15th, I believe. Look at that. Yes, October 15th, Dino Valley. So upcoming on the 30th, we got a star party in North Richland Hills. I've got an email from them today. They said they expect around 100 people or so, and they said they will turn off the parking lot lights, so we'll get that bonus. And then after that, the next night, I know we have Tandy Hills, but I got an event down in Mansfield. It's International Observe the Moon Night, so we've been doing that the last couple of years down there at the Mansfield Library, so just like 2 or 3 scopes, I'll be down there, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Done it before, so no problem there. Which night on that? Saturday, October 1st. And then on the 8th, Dinosaur Valley is actually celebrating their 50th anniversary, so they're going to have several groups out there. This is a day event, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're going to have several groups out there. We've been invited, so I'm going to be down there with the solar scope. So if anybody's got any handouts or displays or anything you would be wanting to lend me, let me know so I can bring it down there. And if anybody wants to help, let me know. And again, I'll put all these on the e-group, so as we get more in, we're about to hit star party season, so I'll let you guys know. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. And up there is, we got a request for the Burleson ISD Space Night. It's on November 3rd. They're expecting 1,500 people. So, yeah, so Patrick is going to be getting in touch, and we've got some ideas. For example, having a booth inside the building where all the stuff is going to be and some stuff there, but we're going to need more than 5 or 6 folks. So if you guys can be thinking about November 3rd, it's in the middle of the week. It's in Burleson. So there'll be lots of information coming out about that. So that's really exciting. I look at these things as we all should look at these events as opportunities to gain interest and memberships. I know at Tandy Hills, I don't know if it happens every time that John hosts an event out there, but every time I'm out there, people join. So Chris is telling me to get in front of the camera, and maybe I don't want to. So anyway, that appears to be a pretty good opportunity for us. So and we'll be getting information out there pretty quickly. So we're going to have the Rising Star Observing Area report. And we got 3 things to talk about here. The grand opening event, I know it's been canceled a couple of times, but we're going to get that sorted out tonight. Cy Simons is going to talk to us about a code of conduct, which is going to be required by everybody to sign. In the development committee, Michelle Thiessen and the development committee are going to talk to us about what's going on. Out at Rising Star, talk about a storage shed and a privy, and then we'll talk about costs and some other things. Okay, so the next slide, please. Just a second, Si. There we go. Oh, now I have to get up here. So this is the calendar for October. The reason why we canceled the workday and the open house event is we simply weren't going to be ready. We did look at porta potties, and we can get one or two, I don't think so. The cost is prohibitive, and there are maintenance issues. So part of Michelle's going to talk about what we're going to do in order to have the open house here in a minute, and looking at the calendar, we have two, I think, dates to have the open house. I think we can, Zach, do you think we can, if we order this week, we can have that thing done by? If it's approved and ordered, I think we can get it done. Oh, okay. So I think the best opportunity is either the 22nd or the 29th of October. That falls 3 days before new moon and 3 days after new moon. So that should allow visual folks to enjoy the evening out there, and it gives us plenty of opportunity to get the shed delivered and built. There'll be at least 2 work days, you think, Zach? Yeah, one to build the foundation and then one to put the shed together. So what I'd like to do is I would like to recommend the 29th as the open house for the new observing area, but I would like to take a vote. So, Patrick, were you going to? Okay. All right. Any questions? Oh, yes, Ross.
So we will have Russian facilities?
If everything goes according to plan, we'll have everything ready. We'll have the privy ready, which is basically what we need. So, yes, sir. Well, they're saying, Mueller said, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder here. So Mueller said, so if we order today or tomorrow, which is the 21st. Okay. And Zach is our construction engineer of the foundation. We can do before, which we want to do before the shed is delivered. So we can do that anytime. So Zach, when can you, what Saturdays are you available, or Sundays? Oh, gotcha. Okay. So we'll have some dates out there pretty quickly. And then as soon as we know when the shed arrives, we'll schedule a work party either that following Saturday or Sunday, depending on the weather. So, okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, he was first. We want you to go. Absolutely. There's nothing preventing you from going there. We want you to go. It's there for everybody's use. It's an outstanding place to do visual or astro. It is awesome. Okay, Jeff Detweiler was out there a couple of weeks ago with his 16, 18, I don't know, big, huge Dob. It was just bloody phenomenal. It's a great place to go. So yes.
If you are going through Cross Plains to get there, there's a nice exon just before you leave Cross Plains that is just a few minutes away from the site. So you've
Yep.
got a break right before you get to the site, and very close when you leave the site.
Yep. So, yeah, it's want you to go. Yes, Tom.
The Exxon station in Crossing Plains is open 24/7. Very clean restrooms on the par with Buc-ee's, for example. And the turnoff is 3.3 miles east of there to take a right.
Closer to the site, what type of signage should we be looking for?
A blue dumpster.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of that, we are building, I've got got me the signs from Thompson, and the signs are they're being constructed now, and we'll have them up there in a couple of weeks. So
For
big
whoever-
yellow sign.
For whoever was asking about landmarks on how to get there, when you're going out of Crossing Plains and you're turning on County Road, I think it's 243. If you'll look for Pioneer, there's a Pioneer Supply Company or something on the right-hand side, and a star with a Pioneer sawmill on the left. And that's your turn to go to the county road.
And probably in 8 weeks, there'll be a sign for Fort Worth Astronomy Club
And then,
on that turnoff.
And then when you're going to the site itself, do not look for the fresh eggs sign. You can still buy them probably but they've taken the sign down. So
okay.
as Tom says, look for the blue dumpster, but there's also a black mailbox on the right-hand side. And you'll see the blue dumpster on the left-hand side. So that's how you'll spot how to get in there.
Just ahead of that, the road turns to left, so.
7/10 mile off of
Robert,
If anybody wants to go out to Rising Star, let me know, because I'll usually post, and we can meet at the Dairy Queen there in Cross Plains, and we can trek on out there. I do not mind meeting anybody there, at all.
and what the Dairy Queen in Cross Plains, it's 9 minutes to the dark side, of which 5 minutes is getting off the paved road to the dark side. Okay, so can we take a vote on the 29th as the grand opening event? All in favor? I think that's it. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to hand it over to Cy to talk about the code of conduct, and this is important stuff here. Thank you.
Okay. You can maximize as wide as you want on that. I'm just going to go through. All right, so here we go. Just going to go through these. If you got any questions, please ask as we go along. So first thing, obviously the site's only open to people in good standing, so if you don't pay your dues, shouldn't go out there. If you get banned for some reason, shouldn't go out there. Number two, we ask that you put a message out on e-groups before you go out. Oh, sorry. Okay. I ask that you put a message out on e-groups before you go out. That'll, in case anybody else wants to go out there, you may convince them to go out there as well. Number three, please bring your badges. So if I don't recognize everybody in here, so it's always helpful if you have a badge with you so we can verify that you're part of the group. Number four, don't share the security codes on email or anything. We'll have them on the Dark Sky site website if you need to look it up. Eventually we'll have a storage building out there, and I think we have a logbook to sign in now. Do we not? Okay. But when you go out there, sign in on the logbook out there. Yeah, we do. Okay. Yeah. So just sign in. That just helps us keep an idea of it's in a bin out there, right? Yeah, a little storage bin. That just helps us keep an idea how many people show up out there. Number six. Once we get, and they'll figure it out, the group that's putting the things together, designated parking, but just start thinking ahead. Don't park in the middle of the area, because if some people are coming out late, you may be in their way. So unload your stuff and kind of put the cars on the edge. Number 7, trash is your responsibility. So if you bring it out there, please bring it back out. Number 8, we do have a fire extinguisher out there, and it'll eventually be put in the building as well.
We have 4.
Huh? We have 4 of them.
4 fire extinguishers.
There we go.
They're in the storage chest. So if you're out there, if you're alone, have one with you. If there's a group, just put them strategically in case you need.
All right. We talked about toilet facilities. Eventually we'll have a permanent. We may have some temporary there for next weekend. Tents, you can bring tents, but try and keep them small. If you're in the military, don't bring one of those GP larges that does 30 people. You don't need that much room. So bring something, put it, something 2 to 4 people, keep it on the edge so other people can use the site. Number 11, no open fires, but you can use propane grills. And Eastland County has a kind of an outside burn ban. You can go to that website and figure out what's going on. Say again? Oh, 90-day burn ban right now? Okay. Yeah. So just be careful with that. Smoking, you can go ahead, you can smoke while you're out there, just pick up your butts and be careful because of the dry grass. Number 13, no fireworks. Number 14, try and keep your pets at home. This is a wildlife area. I don't think anybody here has service dogs, but that's an exception, obviously. 15, firearms are permitted. In fact, Eastland County is a firearm permissive county, but we just ask that you kind of keep them out of sight during the day on other people and such. Use your discretion on that. Number 16, alcohol is permitted, but obviously, you know, be careful of obnoxious behavior, foul language, just common courtesy type stuff. No illegal substances are permitted on a property, and any violation of this could result in loss of your privileges. 18, the site's designated for astrophotography, photography, astronomy, but if you have something else you want to do, that's fine. You just have to get written permission from the board 14 days in advance. Don't submit it 14 days in advance. Start working at it, a little bit out so you can get written permission. 19, it's a wilderness area. Just be careful that snakes and other wildlife may hold their ground or stand their ground while you're out there. 19, 20, number 20, all minors should be supervised while they're out there. Number 21, just remember it's a remote facility. There's no emergency services, no water. You may or may not have cell service depending upon who your server is or carrier is, so just be conscious of that. And if you got to get rescued, that's on your dime, not ours. Let's see. 22, just remember you're responsible for any criminal acts out there and any torts or civil acts. So the club won't reimburse you for, if you have criminal acts or some civil acts that you get sued for. And 23, we're just asking everybody pretty much and to sign a book while they're out there, sign this code of conduct, which we'll have finalized by the next week or so, and then sign in on behalf of minors. Questions? Go ahead, please. Probably because they're almost the same, but I will fix that. Thank you. What else we got? Any other questions? It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty common to everything else we had before in the other sites, but we incorporate a little hold harmless stuff on there at the end. Yes. No, visitors are allowed. Just, yeah. What are you pointing to? At the top? I think it said guests too, did it not? And if it didn't, we'll fix that. Well, visitors can't go out by their own. Yeah, the first, number 1 is what you're talking about. Yeah, visitors aren't eligible, but members can bring their people as well. We'll look at maybe tweaking that a little bit, but they can't go out without a member in good standing, if that's the one you're asking about. Is that the one you're asking about? Okay. Michelle. Yeah, the guests have to sign too. Matt? Sure. Yes. Yes. No. Okay. We'll clarify that, but that's a good question. Okay.
If a guest cannot be there unless they're with a member.
Yeah.
And they must sign them up.
Yeah, we'll clarify number one to talk about that. I'm sorry. We will fix number one, so that's a little clearer. Okay. Your question. Say again, you do what? Oh, no, this is going to be a one-time sign. Am I correct, John? Yeah, you only have to sign it once. But every time you go out there, please sign in on the logbook. Okay? You're next. We are working that now, John. There will be. This is just kind of initial, so I can find the problems with it, and then we're going to tweak it within the next week. You. The logbook too. Yeah.
No, the visitors do not have to sign the hold harmless. The member has signed it. The visitors will sign the logbook. Yeah.
Yeah, but the member's responsible for your visitors. So, and that's what you're signing on that. Michelle, you had something. Yeah, it is down farther.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of scared me at Thompson. I was out there by myself looking at meteors, and I heard about 13 coyotes going around out there, and I figured I could take one or two, but I didn't know how many they were bringing, and that dog came up and licked my leg and just scared the shit out of me. But anyway. So yeah, he probably would have got shot, but yeah. So just beware there's some dogs out there.
So I just one comment about critters. So the Rosses have two dogs. They are awesome dogs. They're very nice. They come up, they'll say hello. If you want them to go away, you tell them to go sit, which to them means go home. But they do a very important job. Any critters that don't belong there aren't there. So they keep them out, or they're outside dogs, and they basically take care of that so they can eat. So do be careful.
Yeah. I can't hear that.
Yeah. One is a retriever and one is a shepherd.
Oh, yeah.
Fenced. Yeah. So. Yeah. And odds are you'll smell them before you see them.
Other questions? All right, thank you. We'll get this fixed up in the next day or so.
Thank you. Thanks, Sai. Okay.
All right, everybody. As you saw, the list of people who are right here. Okay, very good. You saw earlier those of us who are on the Rising Star Development Committee, and Shane's not here, and I don't think Robin made it this evening. But we have had several meetings. We've had discussions. At one of the last meetings, we discussed what we thought our priorities were going to be. The major priority was getting a shed for the toilet and getting that up and running. So do you want to go to the next slide? Tom Roth has actually done a lot of our research as far as sheds and pricing. He's spoken with several different companies about our options. He's found the ones that make them for Home Depot and Lowe's and that quality. They may only have a garage door style that we could get. Some of the companies were too expensive, or our project is too small for them. They do the large church buildings and barn buildings and farm buildings, and so our little shed that we needed was not within their purview. Tough shed is another thing everybody knows about, but that's got wood materials and it would require a regular maintenance. Next slide. We did go out on a field trip September 2nd, Tom and myself and Robin. We went out to Aledo and visited Mueller Metal Buildings. Both of these companies, Mueller and Bartee, you've probably seen them as you're going down the road, going out to Rising Star and Star Ranch. So we went by Mueller, visited there, looked at their products. Then we went out to Eastland, visited Bartee Metals. They're both probably about equal in quality. They're very good quality buildings. What you saw at Star Ranch, that metal building had a wood frame, and of course it had the metal. What we're looking at is probably a product that's 5 to 10 times better, and it's going to last for decades with no maintenance. But we did look at those two particular companies, and one of the major differences is Bartee actually subcontracts their work out, and so it's just going to be more expensive. And again, it's one of those situations where our little shed was not going to be something they were really interested in. They were doing the large buildings, and that's most of what their business was. Since there's no way that we can really completely seal the exterior of these buildings that we're looking at, we're still going to need to use that protective cubicle that we had around the toilet, and that keeps the rodents out of there. So that's one of the things we had to take into account when we were looking at the shed. Next slide. Okay. We're recommending the purchase of a 9x12 Mueller steel building. The cost we found is within budget. It seems to be very reasonable for the quality of product. As I said, the quality of the product is very impressive. The paint comes with a 40-year warranty just on the paint. The metal, you've got a metal framing and the panels, so it's all metal. And the frame is a 14 gauge. The panels and the roof are 26 gauge steel. It's going to last the club for decades. You know, I will be dead probably before the building collapses on you. So and I plan to live a very long life. It is a screw-together assembly, so it'll be very easy for a work party to get out there and put the building together. It's even got a manual that shows you how to do it, how to build it. And of course, we've got people like Tom and Zach who will definitely give us direction on that. The metal doors on this are 3 foot wide, so they're good wide doors. This one, being a smaller shed, only has the single door, but it's braced inside, so it's not going to be sagging over time. I think it's going to last us a while. This comes with a flooring kit. It includes the metal floor joists along with the 2x4s and then the 1/2-inch plywood for the flooring itself. The 9x12 size will fit that protection cubicle like in a corner, and then there'll also be some space available. We can set up a set of shelves. I'm thinking some of the, I got a set at Sam's last year for maybe $80. That's a good quality, heavy duty metal shelving, so it's not going to be wood that gets all icky and stuff. And we'll have room to put that in there to store miscellaneous supplies like the fire extinguishers, first aid kit. If we want to put some of our shovels in there, there's probably going to be room to do something like that. So it'll serve more than just the toilet purpose. Next slide. Okay, these are some pictures that we took while we were out there. Let's see if that works. Do I have a little green thing on there? Probably not. We're going out of camera range here. Here is just sort of a picture of like a smaller shed, but it gives you an idea of what it's going to sort of look like, the metal panels, the roof and all. This is just to show you the bracing on the doors and the quality of even those. This is the 9x12 they had set up. This is the size we're looking for. They had it set up as a greenhouse, but you can see the metal framing in there. It gives you an idea of the size. Where this box is over here, that's about the corner we're looking to put that toilet cube. And I've got a diagram on one of these next slides to show you sort of the floor plan on it. Next slide. Okay, here you go. On this, you've got a doorway. This would be your walk-in. We're anticipating the toilet cubicle going over here. You need a little bit of room behind it for the piping that comes out of it. Then you need a little bit of room over here where that top lifts off and sort of goes over to the side. Then you've got room for shelving over here. You can even add extra shelving over here or just use it for your more miscellaneous type items. Next slide. Okay. This is to sort of show you where we're looking to put it. The committee went out there, was it a month or a month and a half ago? And we were on site to sort of look at where do we want to put this big storage shed that we want? Where do we want the toilet shed for the toilet? You know, how are we thinking about doing parking or roads or concrete pads and all of that? The toilet shed, we're thinking about putting right here. This sort of puts it accessible from all the areas on the viewing area, but it also puts it again back into the wooded area, not on the viewing observing side itself. Next slide. Yeah, and it is shaded. Tom and I actually, we were out there last weekend and built this 9x12, very rough, just to give an idea of the size, and set it where we had the stakes set. So Tom is standing about where the toilet would be. You've got these two little things. This is where your doorway would be. So that frame is out there. As we get ready to set the foundation, you can use it as a guide to see where you're going to put your stuff. But you can see we'll need to do a little bit of clearing. A lot of what's in here is just some vines. We have a couple of small trees that we may need to remove. And by small, I mean like 3 foot, 4 foot, things of that nature. The next slide, that's from the back end. So yeah, you can see how shaded it will be, and that's definitely going to be a plus in the summertime. Next slide. Okay. The shed itself is going to be $3,475. That cost includes the shed. It includes the radiant barrier to go on the inside. It includes the floor kit. And best of all, delivery. They actually manufacture in Ballinger, Texas, but they will actually deliver all of that shed stuff to the Rising Star site. So we don't have to go pick it up and haul it and all of that stuff. So I think that is fantastic. And we have some people who are retired that we hope will be in town and able to accept delivery of that. Yes? I think it's going to depend on the size of truck. We don't know if their truck will get in that gate where we normally take our vehicles. It may be something they have to leave right outside of our gate. If they can get through the gate, then we can get it right up to where we're going to put it together.
We'll make it so they can get through the gate.
Yeah, we can make it work.
Is this going to be on concrete, or is it, what's the base for it?
It's going to be on post pier beam.
Yeah, you've got Robert and Zach who are working on getting the foundation information together. And that actually, some of that information is on the next slide. you've got what I call installation supplies that are going to total to 1,000, 1,200, something along those lines. But that's going to include your tubes for the piers, concrete, the boards, 4x6 boards. That is going to include an auger rental. These guys have tried to think of everything they're going to need to put that foundation pier in. Wind anchors, we've got a set of 4 we'll put in there. We're asking for a couple of solar-powered red location lights. Those of you who are at 3RF, those are the types of lights we're looking to get. We got that information from them that night, so. I call them location lights. They're like patio lights. They're about,
Airport lights.
yeah, they're about 2 foot tall, and they're just a red light that'll show you to come here.
I'm not sure you're gonna cover this or not, but I got a question, some questions about water. What's the source of the water for the toilet?
Oh, the toilet does not have water. The toilet is a composting toilet. We've used it out at Star for many years. It works off of a system of bacterial decomposition. So you've got a base material that looks almost like not really a straw, but something similar to that. That's an organic material. You seed it with microbial. They've got a microbial ingredient you spray in there and some enzymes. And then whatever it does, it actually works. It digests everything that goes in there.
So we don't have any water out there?
That's
We don't have any
correct.
running water. It's on the list, but it's low.
Yeah.
So we'll have a toilet, but no sink?
That is correct. And what we've always used at Star is just have some hand sanitizer there.
At least you don't have to worry about busted pipes in the winter.
That's true. Yes.
Are you anticipating storing any of the equipment like the docks or anything like that?
This may or may not be able to store a telescope in it. I think we're going to have to visually see it. A larger storage building is planned for the future. That's just not our priority right now. And that may actually be, I know Zach's got a great schematic if it's something we want to actually build from the lumber that we saved from the deck at Star Ranch. So that will be probably the next project, is working on that storage building. And I think that the detail figures on this, I think, are going to be in the next slide that Bob has in there. He's got it all broken down.
Thank you, Michelle. So Michelle and Zach got all this information for us. And so I don't know why I don't like to say toilet house. I call it privy. I don't know. I'm different. So the shed itself is $34.75. These are and then all the material to do the build out. The bottom line is we expect to spend $4,509.38. I've included, there's some miscellaneous items and hardware, some extra money. That's a little bit of fudge factor for us. These are the airport lights, LED lights that Michelle's talking about.
It's actually 2 for $70. 2
Okay.
lights for $70.
Okay. So, I see. Yeah, but I'm 4. I've figured 4 is enough. Yes, sir.
Do we have to worry about permits or inspections for this?
No.
Not a permanent building.
Yeah, it's considered not a permanent building. We're outside of city limits. We have a lot of things that factor into it. So, yes.
Just a ridiculous little detailed question. How deep in the ground do you have to set those piers?
Zach, you're talking,
We're looking at 36 inches.
yeah. This building is not going to move. It's going to, as Michelle said, it's going to be there for a long time. So, yeah.
Has y'all taken into consideration any kind of screening or skirting or something like that to keep critters from taking up residence?
Yes. Oh, the question was, have we considered skirting to keep critters out from underneath. And the,
Chat, is the door going to open to the field, or is it going to open to the side? Apparently it's going to be to the field.
it'll be to the field. It's not going to go inside, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
So they're asking, can we make sure that the door isn't that visible looking south in case it opens up? And is there going to be a light inside? Is the question.
It'll be, there,
We'll have lights inside.
yeah.
Very similar to Star where we had the LED lights on the inside and they're red.
Oh, yeah, there'll be red LED lights in there.
Okay, someone is just concerned about light shining onto the observing field.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this would be interior, and then on the outside, you'll have those location lights. They're low, and they shine down on the ground.
The lights will be, the airport lights are 2 feet tall. They'll be, and they're on the ground for the walkway, and the LED lights inside the building are red. Any other questions out there, Chris? Okay, I'd like to make a motion. Oh, and I should say that the board is unanimously agreed for this budget, or to this budget for the Privy House.
I have one thing.
Yeah.
At Bob's old place, we had a bunch of picnic tables there. Are we going to have anything like that?
Eventually.
Okay.
Uh,
Did y'all consider adding a little contingency just so that if something happened, they wouldn't have to come back for more money?
We did.
5,000 or whatever.
We did, but if the group wants to agree to 5,000 as a top end budget, or so. Yeah, yeah. All right. Si.
So I'll move that we accept, or,
Oh, the budget.
you can't make a motion, you're president.
Oh,
So, but I move that we spend up to $5,000.
okay. So a motion. One more. Okay. You need to shout, please. I can't hear you. Okay, so the motion is to spend up to $5,000, which would cover any additional sheets of plywood, I would think. Did someone second the motion? Okay, the motion's been seconded. All in favor? I think by acclamation it's approved. Okay, thank you very much, Michelle and development team. Awesome job. Mr. Bill Hall, or do we call him Monty?
Just a discussion about toilets. It's a hard act to follow. Feel like I've been set up here. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so this is everything that is happening up in the sky from September 20th through October 18th. It's basically tonight until the night of the next meeting. So next slide. Oh, back up a little bit. You give credit where credit's due. Got Robert Cargill, our very own Robert Cargill, and black and white shot of the M31 Andromeda Galaxy. So next slide. All right, so September 22nd is fall. It means the nights are going to start getting longer. So that's what we're looking for here. So we got new moon on Sunday the 25th, and it will be darkness all night long. Not for open house because I guess I don't check my email thoroughly enough. But anyway, that's happening on a weekend, so take advantage. Next slide. Okay, so this is the big news, the big story for the month, and that's the opposition of Jupiter. That's also on Sunday. Not that it makes too much of a difference with new moon, because Jupiter's bright enough that you really don't need to worry about the moon. But there's a kind of a cool thing happening. See, opposition, of course, is when you've got the planet Earth and whatever other planet on the same side of the sun. So basically, we're as close to Jupiter as we're going to be all year long. But a second thing is actually happening is on this year's occasion, Jupiter is actually on perihelion on the same day, which is actually when Jupiter is the closest to the sun. The only thing that's actually getting us closer to Jupiter is if we were in aphelion. And so we're actually really quite close to this. It's going to be 107 years before we're this close to Jupiter. And go to the next slide. So some people, most people I would say, even myself, I think, okay, well, when I'm thinking about differences between, the closest that a planet is to the furthest away that a planet is, so when you're thinking about size differences, you're thinking Mars, in the 2-year period, you get this enormous delta of size difference. Venus, it's actually much more significant. It can go from huge to tiny. Well, okay, so this is actually pretty significant. You're thinking about Jupiter as far as the biggest it can be in the sky and the smallest it can be in the sky from an apparent size. So we're talking about almost 50 arc seconds in diameter of apparent size versus almost 30. So yeah, it's a kind of an interesting little tidbit there. It's been, I think, something like, well, according to NASA, it's been something like 56 years since the Earth's been this close to Jupiter. So it's kind of a neat thing. And, even though the tiny, arc seconds are, the planet's still really tiny in the sky, that it's still pretty significant. And I think that it'll look really great in the eyepiece and on the camera eye. Next slide. Third time's a charm? Maybe. This is a really great picture. This was made by Jim Potts. He and his wife were at Cape Canaveral, or Kennedy, whatever you want to call it. I still like Canaveral. And so we're kind of waiting. They talk about the fact that there's windows, the launch windows. And it's like, okay, there's bad weather, or there just happens to be a hydrogen fuel leak somewhere, whatever. And so they have to scrub the launch, and then they have to wait. And according to the Artemis mission, these are the window constraints. And it's just kind of an interesting little listing of the four major factors of why it just can't be, well, we'll scrub a launch for today, but we'll do it next Tuesday. Or they actually have to wait like a 12-day period or 14-day period or something like that. So you got the position of the moon, so it's launching off the Earth, and then it's doing this smooth, efficient ramp on to orbit around the moon. So the next one's kind of a tricky one because it's like, okay, so the position of the Earth can't be in the way of the vehicle's trip to the moon because the vehicle's got solar panels. And if the solar panels don't have sunlight for more than 90 minutes, that actually becomes a problem with the charging of batteries. So they have to actually take into consideration that the Earth can't be eclipsing the sun and blocking the solar rays to the solar panels. It's a really interesting thing. The third thing is that it's got to be, the craft coming back from the moon has to be positioned well for the skip entry maneuver. Basically, the skip entry is basically when they actually use the drag into the atmosphere and basically skip off the atmosphere. But while they're actually going into the atmosphere, there's drag that actually slows it down. So they're actually giving a good slowdown with this, skip back out of the atmosphere, and then come back in for kind of a second re-entry. The fourth thing is the position of the Earth's rotation to accommodate a daytime splashdown. So they got to get it in the right ocean. That's where all the boats are going to be looking for the spacecraft. And it's got to be in the daytime because spacecrafts are hard to find in the ocean at night. So let's cross our fingers about the 27th. The Draconids. So, or the Glycobinids, whatever you want to call it. The parent body is periodic Comet 21, Glycobinids Inner. Back in 2018, I was excited about this because the comet actually came close to the sun. It was actually kind of made its pass. I think it's like a 6.6 year orbit around the sun, and it made its turn into the inner solar system. And there was when a comet goes through its orbit, it's leaving the stuff behind. And of course, when the Earth passes through this stuff, that's what a meteor shower is. It's basically comet doodles that it leaves behind. So in 2018, it actually passed through one of the comet orbits. I think from like 1957 or something like that. And it was actually a particularly dense part of this trail. And that's what causes a more significant meteor shower. So it's the density. It's not like these comet doodles are just like evenly spread out in the orbit around this comet. It actually is in clumps. And when the Earth goes through a clump, that's when you get the good show, okay? So in 2018, it was cloudy, and I looked at the weather map, and I drove 50 miles out from Abilene, okay? 50 miles out from Abilene. That means I drove 100 miles out to see meteor shower. And I sat on my truck next to I-20, and I watched the Draconids, which is supposed to be maybe 20 an hour at best at the zenith. It looked like a Perseids. Actually, it looked like a pretty good Perseids. And this is a funny thing about the Draconids, is that in 2011, they had 600 an hour. That was reported in Canada, okay? In the 60s or the 50s or something like that, they had meteor storms. They had like a couple of meteor storms. And we're talking about more than 1,000 an hour, maybe 2,500 an hour. I can't remember what the specs were, but the thing is that the Draconids is just an odd one, and it's just always worth checking out. The other cool thing about the Draconids here is the fact that Draco, as we all know, is right up there in the sky after nightfall. So it makes it an evening meteor shower, when most meteor showers, they peak in the wee hours of the morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, as the Earth is rotating and it's pressing towards the meteorite stream, or the meteor stream, that you've got a Draco really high in the sky, and it's basically giving us the best opportunity with the best time of night, and with about 2 days out from a full moon, that hopefully that's kind of gives us a little bit of an edge. So next slide. Mercury in the morning. So we've got what's called the Greater Western Elongation on Saturday, October 8th. So it's kind of a crummy one, because the orbits of the planets, like Mercury, aren't exactly flat with the plane of the solar system. It varies. You've got a great deal of variation between, amongst elongations as they go throughout the year. And this one just happens to be about 17 degrees above the horizon, so not great, but hey, Mercury, if you want to look at Mercury at its highest, it'll be October 8th. So, little thing about elongations is, something I've always been confused about, and that is, well, why do they call it the Western elongation if it appears in the east in the morning? And why do they call it Eastern elongation when it appears west in the evening? Well, it's because it's silly. It's because, it's coming up in the east, but Mercury is visually to the west of the sun. So there's your fun fact for the evening. Next slide. All right, so the next full moon is on Sunday, October 9th. It's the Hunter's moon. It's marking the beginning of the winter prep effort, and it's based on the fact that the lunar calendar and the following of the full moons was extremely important to the Native Americans, and so that's why we've got these names, because the September full moon is closer to the autumnal equinox. That's why September moon is the harvest moon and not October. So it's like the one little option there when it comes to moons. Next slide. That's it. As always, keep looking up.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, we're going to rush through to a few things here. We're going to do the raffle. Okay? So, couple things. I got really busy. I left the raffle stuff at home. But we have a plan. So, we have 4 items up here. 3. Not that. Okay. So we have a sheet of James Webb stamps. They were just issued or for sale yesterday or today, right, John? Last Thursday. Okay. And then the other, I don't know what the other 3 items are, but the next 3 key items are $15, $10, and $5 gift certificates from Explorer Scientific. Explorer Scientific. You will get them electronically. $295-0245. Okay, going, well, here we go. Do you want the stamps or the $15 gift certificate. Stamps. Oh, they're right here. Okay. There you go. Thank you. $2950271. Okay, 15, 10, or 5, or one of two books. Exploring Space, the highlight of Frontier. Okay. $2950225. You'll take the other book, okay? Now, how many do we normally give out? 5? 4?
Well, we can give out 5 if we got 5.
No, we'll save the others for, and also we're really pressed for time. Okay, awesome. Congratulations. Bylaws update. So we're working on, the board is working on the bylaws. We have some time. We found out our tax bill is going to be between $8 and $30 for the property. And the purpose of the bylaw updates is so our legal beagle can work on getting our tax exemption for next year's taxes, so we have more time than we thought. So we look to finish up the bylaws sometime early first quarter, and it gives us the opportunity to do them right and not rushed. Treasurer's report, you have 45 seconds.
We have some money left and it's in the bank. I think the expenditures that we're doing, the $5,000 expenditures, pretty much going to cap what we're looking to spend on Rising Star for a while until we get more money coming in. The savings account up there, that $18,000 is typically where we've taken everything dealing with that property. We are up to, as of today, we're up to 158 members. We had 3 sign up and pay here. So
awesome.
Yeah, very awesome. We have 3 people waiting. What else?
Oh, and Chris is reporting we had 4 more tried to join during the meeting. So
Really?
opportunity knocks.
Did you get names and addresses? They did send email?
Yeah.
Super.
I saw one from Night Sky Network.
Okay, super. Go on to the next slide. I think there's the one where it shows the 2023 membership. So that is what was referenced earlier. We always hit this cliff in July, and now we're back on the upward swing. So there we go. And I think that's enough because we're supposed to be out of this building by 9:30.
Thanks, John. Okay, Christmas party. Chris, can you put a December calendar up here, please? So while Chris is doing this, Sarah Twidell, we've been chatting, and she's going to do a presentation on planetarium stuff sometime in the spring, but she put me in contact with the new planetarium director. His name is Nicholas over at the Fort Worth Museum of Science and Industry. And so we're looking to partner with them on a lot of things. I know we've already started doing a couple of things. So for the Christmas party, in looking at the calendar, the board talked about this at the last board meeting, and we're thinking the 10th of December is the best day. I won't claim to be the most sensitive guy on the planet, but I'm concerned. Not concerned isn't the right word, but I'm curious to know whether Spring Creek is the best place for us, because we may have members that are either vegan or vegetarian, and Spring Creek simply isn't going to work for them. So does anybody have any objections to us looking at other venues besides Spring Creek? I take that as a no. Okay. Quick show of hands on December 10th. Okay, awesome. That covers Christmas party. We'll get some venues figured out. I'll be honest with you, I'm going to try and get us into the planetarium. I don't know if that'll happen, but we'll see. So I want to talk about upcoming presentations. We got quite a few things going on. I've been reminded that November is swap meet. So the last presentation is going to be in October. And weather permitting, we're thinking of having a session on using planetarium software to plan and execute a visual astronomy evening. And the thinking is it will be outdoors. So, and I've been talking with someone who is interested in helping out, and they have a Dob, so it should be, if it comes off, the next time we have decent weather, we'll try and do that. The other option for October is either astronomical house cleaning, which is basically, hey, it's time to clean your OTAs and get prepped for the big season. Then we have, we always have Bill Hall to be the fallback for us. He's got a presentation in hand that he likes to call Fumbling in the Dark with Moving Parts, a show and tell for Astro Equipment Organization. So that's what's upcoming, and then we have some other things we're trying to get sorted out. So anybody have any questions or comments? I apologize for the length of the meeting. I did not intend it to go 2.5 hours. Some of us are going over to World of Beer right after the meeting. It's right down the street. So thank you, everybody, for attending. Adjourned. So have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for coming.